You've been taught a version of reality that was never yours to question, that God is a mystery, the universe is a cold accident, and Jesus was a man who died to save your sins. Full stop. But what if all of that was wrong? What if the story you've accepted is only the surface of something much deeper, more structured, and more deliberate? There is a book rarely discussed, often dismissed and hidden in plain sight, that claims to reveal the true nature of existence not written by humans, but dictated by higher intelligences. It's called the Urantia book. And if what it says is true, then everything from your beliefs about divinity to the structure of the cosmos to the very purpose of your soul has been misunderstood. This isn't just another spiritual text. This is a challenge to every system that ever told you to stop asking questions. It didn't begin in a temple or a laboratory. It started in a quiet room in Chicago in the 1920s, where a respected psychiatrist named Dr. William Sadler was called in to investigate a strange case. A man whose identity was never revealed had begun speaking in his sleep. But this wasn't ordinary sleep talking. It was something else entirely. During these episodes, he would deliver long, complex discourses on science, philosophy, cosmology, and the divine. The vocabulary was advanced, the ideas coherent, layered, and profound far beyond the man's normal intellectual capacity. Sadler, who had spent years debunking spiritualist frauds, approached it with skepticism. But the deeper he looked, the more convinced he became that something unprecedented was unfolding. Over time, he and a group of intellectuals formed what came to be known as the Forum. They documented these sessions meticulously, compiling thousands of pages over 2 decades. The result became the Urantia book, a text unlike any other, one that claimed to be not inspired by higher beings, but directly authored by them. The book made no attempt to flatter the ego or conform to existing belief systems. It stated plainly, humanity was ready to receive higher knowledge, and this transmission was being delivered by celestial intelligences to bridge the gap between primitive religion, fragmented science, and distorted theology. It offered an expansive cosmology, a redefinition of Jesus, and a blueprint for the evolution of the soul. And yet, despite the magnitude of its claims, the book was not promoted. It wasn't marketed with evangelical zeal. It wasn't attached to any church. It simply appeared, quietly published in 1955 by the Urantia Foundation, with no author's name, no central guru, and no demand for money or allegiance. That alone should make you pause. In a world where power is almost always claimed by name, here was a book that asked only to be studied, not believed, examined. So why haven't you heard of it? Why isn't it taught in theology departments, debated in spiritual communities, or dissected in mainstream discourse? Perhaps because the Urantia book doesn't fit into any existing box. It's not a religious dogma. It's not a scientific theory. It's a direct challenge to both. It doesn't tell you what to believe. It tells you that you've been believing a story that was never complete, and that maybe, just maybe, the truth has been hidden not because it's dangerous, but because it's liberating. Some of what this book reveals is too controversial to say outright here. That's why we created Insights Academy, our free newsletter, where we share what can't be spoken on platforms like this. Sign up via the link in the description, and you'll receive a free copy of the Kybalion, but only for a limited time. This book doesn't ask you to follow, it asks you to wake up. It speaks in the language of order, pattern, and intention, describing a universe that is not random, but deeply structured, a living cosmos pulsing with intelligence and hierarchy, where every being, including you, is on an evolutionary journey. It doesn't paint humanity as fallen, but as unfinished. It doesn't worship mystery. It maps it. What began as a sleep phenomenon became a literary enigma. But if its claims are even partially true, then what we're looking at isn't just a manuscript. It's a cosmic transmission. One deliberately timed for the moment when humanity is ready to hear it. And that moment, according to the book, is now. You've been taught to see the universe as a vast, cold expanse, an endless stretch of stars and galaxies governed by chance, mathematics, and nothing more. That's the narrative anyway. Science tells you it all began with a bang. Then chaos slowly shaped itself into order. Religion often skips the detail and jumps straight to God did it. But what if both miss the bigger picture? What if the universe wasn't just born, but designed? According to the Urantia book, the cosmos isn't some indifferent void. It's a living, breathing system, an intricate and hierarchical structure created with intention. And Earth. It's not the center of it. It's not even special. It's just one small world among billions, nestled within a universe of unimaginable depth and order. The book outlines a map so vast and complex it defies traditional understanding. At the core lies Havana, the central and perfect universe, eternal and unchanging, the home of the universal Father and the source of all creation. Surrounding Havana are 7 super-universes, each composed of billions of inhabited worlds. We exist in one of them, Urantia. Within Urantia lies the Milky Way, and within that spiral of stars sits our planetary system. Our planet, Urantia, is just one of the countless evolutionary worlds in this grand cosmic design. But this isn't just science fiction. The book gives names, functions, and purpose to every layer. It speaks of ancients of days beings, of incomprehensible wisdom who govern the super-universes, of creator sons like Michael of Nebadon, better known to us as Jesus, who are responsible for creating and managing local universes. These are not metaphorical constructs or allegories. They are presented as real beings within a real structure, invisible to us only because our spiritual vision remains undeveloped. And this structure doesn't exist in chaos. It operates according to divine administration laws, order, and a system of progressive growth. Planets evolve, souls ascend, civilizations rise toward light. There are trillions of beings far ahead of us, not in technology, but in consciousness. And while we chase material advancement, they focus on spiritual maturity. Earth, in this model, is in its infancy still chaotic, still trying to find its place, but it's part of something much bigger. It always has been. This idea alone is a direct challenge to the narrative of random evolution or one-dimensional theology. If the Urantia book is even partly right, then the universe is far more like a school than a battlefield, a structured classroom of souls, each moving through experiences, learning lessons, and slowly evolving toward perfection. That may sound lofty, but doesn't something in you already suspect this? Haven't you always felt that life meant more than survival? That maybe, just maybe, there's a reason certain ideas persist, like the soul, the afterlife, ascension, or angels. What if they weren't fantasies, but distorted memories of something real? The Urantia book doesn't just offer poetic language, it offers structure and architecture of existence. It gives you context. It places you on the map of something so staggeringly large and beautiful that it makes your day-to-day worries seem microscopic. But that doesn't mean your life is meaningless. It means it's part of a system too vast for you to see all at once. You've been told the universe is cold, indifferent, and meaningless. But what if it's actually alive, intelligent, and waiting for you to grow into its rhythm? What if you're not a mistake, but a part of the most sophisticated system ever conceived? If you've ever looked around and wondered why the world feels off, why history seems riddled with suffering, confusion, and conflict. The Urantia book offers an explanation that's as startling as it is profound. It doesn't blame humanity's chaos on original sin, nor does it suggest we're simply a violent species by nature. Instead, it points to something most religions only hint at, and most scientists would never dare consider a cosmic rebellion. According to the book, Earth, known in celestial terms as Urantia, was not always disconnected. We were once part of a greater spiritual network, a vast interplanetary system where divine guidance and cosmic harmony flowed freely. But that changed because of one being, Lucifer. Not the mythical devil of horns and hellfire, not the caricature, but a real being and administrator of our local system who, hundreds of thousands of years ago, initiated a rebellion against the divine order. His argument that intelligent beings didn't need the oversight of a universal God, that autonomy should reign over divine guidance. It wasn't a war of weapons, but of ideas. Lucifer's manifesto promoted self-assertion over spiritual alignment, and a significant number of celestial beings followed him. Earth was one of the worlds caught in this ideological revolt, and as a result, we were cut off, quarantined, spiritually isolated from the rest of the universe. This wasn't punishment, it was containment. To prevent the rebellion from spreading, the affected worlds were severed from the higher circuits. Earth became a spiritual island, left to figure things out without the full support of divine administration. If you've ever wondered why so many of our prophets, sages, and visionaries speak of the darkness of the world, this is why. It's not because God abandoned us. It's because we were put into isolation to contain the spread of corruption. We weren't cast out. We were protected from ourselves until we were strong enough to see clearly again. But here's the part that should stop you in your tracks. Most religions echo this story without realizing it. The fall of man, the exile from Eden, the angel cast from heaven, they're all fragments, echoes of this greater narrative. But over time, the pieces were twisted into stories of guilt, shame, and damnation instead of inspiring growth. They instilled fear. Instead of explaining the broken connection, they made you believe you were inherently broken. And that's the tragedy. We've been raised on fragments of a story that was never meant to condemn us. It was meant to empower us. The Urantia book reframes this ancient cosmic rupture not as an eternal curse, but as a temporary disruption. It tells us that the rebellion is ending, that the circuits are slowly reconnecting, that Earth is rejoining the larger spiritual family it was once part of. The chaos you see around you isn't permanent. It's the birth pain of a planet waking up after a long, dark sleep. But waking up is hard. It means letting go of everything you thought was normal. It means realizing that the systems that govern this world, our politics, our ideologies, even our religions were shaped in the shadow of isolation. They evolved without access to the full light. They did what they could with what they had. But now the light is returning. You were never born into a doomed world. You were born into a recovering one, a planet in transition, and you're not here by accident. According to the Urantia book, souls are placed with precision. Your presence here isn't punishment, it's participation. You're here to help mend what was broken, but you can't do that while believing the old story. You have to see it for what it really is, not a fall from grace, but a detour in evolution, one that we're finally ready to correct. For most people, the story of Jesus begins in a manger and ends on a cross. Everything in between is framed by a handful of gospel accounts, filtered through centuries of religious interpretation and institutional agenda. You were taught that Jesus was the Son of God who came to die for your sins, a divine sacrifice to satisfy an angry deity. But what if that narrative only scratches the surface? What if the truth is not that he came to die, but that he came to live, and not just live, but to experience, embody, and demonstrate the divine potential within every single one of us? According to the Urantia book, Jesus was not simply a spiritual teacher or enlightened prophet. He was Michael of Nebadon, a creator son, a divine being entrusted with the formation and governance of entire universes. These creator sons are born of the universal Father and the eternal Son, and they each establish and oversee local universes filled with billions of inhabited planets. Our universe, Nebadon, is one such domain, and Michael Jesus chose Earth, Urantia, as the place where he would perform his seventh and final bestowal, the act of becoming one with his own creation. Let that sink in. Jesus didn't come here as a savior in the traditional sense. He didn't descend to offer blood as payment. He incarnated to fully understand his creation, to experience life as we do, to walk in our shoes, to suffer our limitations, and to demonstrate what a life of complete alignment with divine will looks like. His mission wasn't to found a religion, it was to model the path of spiritual evolution. His life was the example, not the exception. And what the Urantia book reveals about his life goes far beyond the fragments we find in the Bible. It offers a detailed account of his childhood, adolescence, and lost years, those decades between the temple and the Jordan that the scriptures mostly ignore. It speaks of his travels, his studies, and his encounters with different cultures and philosophies. It paints a portrait of a man who wasn't just waiting for his public ministry, but one who was quietly preparing, questioning, integrating, and growing. He faced real struggles. He doubted. He wept. He wrestled with his purpose not because he was weak, but because he was fully human and yet fully divine. This dual nature is what makes his journey so profound. He wasn't pretending to be human. He was human. And by living as one of us, he didn't just fulfill a cosmic requirement. He earned the right to govern with perfect empathy. He became not just a sovereign ruler, but a brother, a friend, an example. His death was not a cosmic necessity. It was a tragic consequence of ignorance and fear. The crucifixion wasn't demanded by God. It was allowed by humans. And yet, even in that moment of violence and misunderstanding, he forgave. He transcended vengeance. He embodied love. If you've always felt that the institutional version of Jesus left too many questions unanswered, why his teachings focused more on the kingdom within than rituals, why his message was about transformation, not transaction, then maybe it's because the deeper truth was buried under dogma. The Urantia book doesn't ask you to worship Jesus. It invites you to understand him not as a remote figure on a stained glass window, but as someone who walked this earth for the same reason you're here: to grow, to serve, to remember. It reframes Jesus not as the singular exception to human potential, but as its highest expression. And in doing so, it flips the script. His purpose wasn't to make you feel unworthy. It was to show you what's possible, not to be idolized, but to be followed not in blind obedience, but in conscious embodiment. If what this book says is true, then Jesus didn't come to save you. He came to show you how to save yourself. There's a quiet lie running beneath modern life. The idea that you are inherently broken, born flawed, and in need of fixing from the outside. Religion frames this as original sin. Culture frames it as inadequacy. The system sells you salvation in the form of status, image, and endless achievement. And yet, with all these external promises of worth, something still feels missing. That emptiness inside you, it's not because you're flawed. It's because you've been cut off from something vital. Not something you need to find, but something you need to remember. According to the Urantia book, within every human being resides a fragment of divine presence. It's not a metaphor or symbol, it's real. This divine fragment is called the thought adjuster, and it is your truest compass, the part of God that lives in you, constantly whispering not in words, but in insight, conscience, and quiet direction. It's not there to control you. It's there to guide you, always respecting your free will. That's the paradox of divine love. It never forces, only invites. You've probably felt it in those moments of stillness, when a deeper truth rises above the noise. In those inner nudges that tell you to take the harder but more honest path. In the gentle but persistent awareness that you are meant for more than routine, more than survival, more than the distractions that dominate most of your life. That feeling isn't fantasy. It's contact, a silent, persistent invitation to wake up. The thought adjuster is your divine inheritance. You didn't earn it. You didn't request it. It was placed in you as proof that you are not separate from God. You are an extension of the divine, a being in progress, on a path of inward discovery that leads ultimately back to the source. And this isn't about belief, it's about relationship. The thought adjuster doesn't ask for worship, it seeks cooperation. It doesn't demand rituals or praise. It simply waits patiently for you to listen. But here's the challenge. The systems around you are designed to drown it out. Endless stimulation, constant noise, synthetic desires. They're not just distractions, they're barriers. The more you outsource your sense of worth, the harder it is to hear your own divine voice. The thought adjuster speaks clearest in silence, in integrity, in honest self-reflection. It can't be bought. It can't be decoded by another. Its guidance is personal, direct, pure. The Urantia book suggests that the path to true transformation isn't through religion or philosophy alone, but through conscious partnership with this inner fragment. Moral decisions, intellectual growth, acts of love and service. These are the mediums through which your soul evolves. Every choice is a vote for alignment or separation. Every moment is another step on a journey of cosmic consequence. You were never meant to be a sinner crawling for grace. You were meant to be a soul awakening to its origin. The divine spark isn't above you judging your worth. It's within you waiting to be recognized. Your spiritual growth doesn't begin with belief in an external savior. It begins with trust in the quiet force already embedded in your core. You are not broken. You are incomplete. And that's not a flaw. It's an opportunity. Because incompleteness means you're still becoming, still unfolding, still invited. And once you begin to hear that voice inside, the one that's been waiting, whispering, guiding you, won't need anyone to tell you what to believe. You'll know. Not because someone taught you, but because your soul remembered what it always knew to be true. If the Urantia book offers such a vast and intricate vision of the universe, if it reframes the life of Jesus with staggering detail, if it claims to be authored by celestial intelligences and holds answers to questions that have haunted humanity for millennia, then why has no one told you about it? Why isn't it debated in universities, unpacked in churches, or dissected by think tanks and theologians? Why is something this big so unknown? The answer is both simple and unsettling, because this book doesn't just reveal new truths. It renders old systems obsolete. It doesn't fit into any established category. It doesn't ask you to join a church, tithe a percentage, attend a ceremony, or bow to a hierarchy. It undermines all that. There is no clergy in the Urantia book, no dogma, no demand for blind obedience. It offers knowledge without control, insight without indoctrination. And for the systems built on power and dependency, that is dangerous. You live in a world where information is monetized, controlled, and weaponized, where attention is currency, and ideas that empower are quickly co-opted or buried. Religious institutions, political machines, even the scientific establishment, they all depend on a consensus reality. They survive because most people agree to see the world in a narrow, manageable way. The Urantia book threatens that consensus. It doesn't try to blend in. It challenges the foundations of theology, rewrites the cosmological map, and dismisses the idea that anyone needs to mediate your relationship with the divine. Organized religion doesn't know what to do with it. It doesn't align with existing doctrine. It doesn't reinforce the mechanisms of guilt, sin, or ritual. It doesn't call for worship. It calls for understanding. It doesn't make you feel small so it can sell you salvation. It tells you the divine is already inside you and always has been. That kind of message dismantles centuries of control. It breaks the spell. And those who profit from that spell would rather you never found the book. Even academia avoids it, because admitting that the Urantia book deserves serious study would mean cracking open doors that most institutions are terrified to walk through. It doesn't match the language of mainstream science or theology, so instead of investigating it, they dismiss it, label it pseudoscience, file it away as a curiosity, not because they've disproved it, but because they don't know how to contain it. And here's the irony: if it had a human author, a publishing house, a financial agenda, it might have made its way into mainstream consciousness, but it didn't. It arrived quietly, without a marketing strategy, no spokesperson, no messiah, just a text, a message, a map. And because of that, it has remained hidden in plain sight for nearly 70 years. But books don't vanish because they're unimportant. They vanish because they're inconvenient. The Urantia book isn't just inconvenient, it's disruptive. It doesn't ask you to believe. It dares you to think, to question, to unlearn. And for a world designed to keep you spiritually numb and intellectually sedated, that makes it radioactive. It's not hard to understand why this book hasn't gone viral. People aren't just afraid of being wrong. They're afraid of having to rebuild everything they thought they knew. Reading this book isn't just a mental exercise. It's a confrontation, a quiet rebellion against inherited thought, a challenge to look beyond the surface and ask, what else have I accepted without examination? Maybe you felt it, that nagging sense that the answers you've been given don't quite add up, that something deeper is just out of reach. The Urantia book doesn't promise easy answers, but it does offer a different lens, one that shows you a universe alive with purpose, a cosmos humming with design, a God who isn't demanding loyalty, but offering partnership, and a life that isn't random, but woven into a pattern so vast you've only seen the corner of it. From the moment you were born, everything around you, culture, education, religion, taught you that this world is your one shot, that Earth is both your origin and your destiny, that what matters most is what happens here, what you earn, what you own, how you're remembered. But what if this isn't home? What if this planet is just the first classroom in a much longer curriculum? According to the Urantia book, your life here is only the beginning of a soul journey that spans across worlds, dimensions, and entire tiers of existence. You are not a finished product. You are a soul in transit, and Earth was never meant to be the destination. It's the starting point. The book describes a process of soul ascension that rewrites everything you've been told about life after death. Not a binary of heaven or hell, not a final judgment at the gates, but a system of progression. After this life, if your soul chooses to continue, you awaken, not in a void, but on the mansion worlds, the next stage of existence where your spiritual education intensifies. These aren't dreamlike realms of eternal rest. They are structured, real, and purposeful. Each level prepares you for the next, refining your consciousness, expanding your understanding, drawing you closer to divine awareness. This isn't reincarnation. You don't return to Earth over and over again to pay some vague karmic debt. You move forward. You evolve, not randomly, but through a curriculum built by cosmic design. The aim is not perfection in one lifetime, but growth across many stages of existence. And at every step, you're supported, not judged by spiritual beings tasked with helping you unfold your potential. You're not navigating alone. You are known, watched over, guided. The religious systems you grew up with rarely speak of this kind of evolution. They tend to compress everything into this one life, offering salvation or condemnation based on a single decision or belief. But that idea is built on fear, not truth. What kind of divine intelligence would create an entire universe just to funnel souls into reward or punishment after 80 years on one small planet? That's not justice. That's control. The Urantia book presents something far more dynamic. It suggests that your soul is a co-creator in its own destiny, that each decision you make, each act of courage, each refusal to conform to fear, it all echoes beyond this life. Your time on Earth matters deeply, but not in the way you've been told. It's not about achieving success or following rules. It's about learning how to live in harmony with the divine within you. That's the test. Not obedience, not perfection, but alignment. And this journey doesn't end until you reach the presence of the Universal Father, the source of all things. That may take eons. It may stretch across galaxies. But that's the path. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to begin. The discomfort you feel in this world, the ache for something more, the strange nostalgia for a place you've never been, those aren't flaws in your programming. They're clues, traces of memory, echoes of a journey that didn't begin here and won't end here either. You were never meant to stay. You were meant to awaken, to grow, to move forward. This world is a chapter, not the whole book. And once you understand that, death stops being an end. It becomes a continuation, a transition into the next level of reality where the soul, now a little wiser, keeps climbing. You're not just a person, you're a pilgrim. And the road ahead isn't dark, it's designed. There's a reason you're still reading this. It's not just curiosity, it's recognition. Something in you knows that what you've been taught isn't the whole story. That the systems that shaped your worldview, education, religion, government, media were never built to awaken you. They were built to shape you. But if you're still here, it's because something in you has already started to break free. Something deeper, something ancient, a quiet part of your soul that refuses to be boxed in by doctrine or reduced to labels. That something is truth, and it's waking up inside you. The Urantia book doesn't give you a new system to obey. It gives you the tools to dismantle the old one from within. It challenges you to rethink what it means to be spiritual, to be alive, to be human. It doesn't point to a preacher, a temple, or a ritual. It points to you, your conscience, your intuition, your inner guidance. And the moment you begin to trust that internal compass, you become dangerous to the system. Not because you're violent, not because you're loud, but because you no longer need it. You don't need someone to tell you who God is. You don't need a degree to validate your curiosity. You don't need permission to explore your own consciousness. That kind of freedom doesn't fit neatly into political parties or religious creeds. It isn't monetizable. It isn't profitable. but it's yours. And when you live from that place, you don't just escape control. You become a mirror that shows others what's possible. The systems that dominate this world survive on your agreement with limitation, agreement with unworthiness, agreement with separation. Break that agreement and the illusion starts to crack. The power they hold over you isn't physical, it's psychological. They can only cage a mind that doesn't know it's free, but you're starting to know. You're starting to remember. And once you see the bars for what they are, just stories, just programming, you can step right through them. The Urantia book doesn't ask for blind belief. It asks for critical thought. It invites you to test its ideas, to wrestle with its concepts, to investigate its claims. It doesn't demand faith. It dares you to examine. And that's why it's so dangerous, because it trusts you with the truth. It trusts that you're ready to think for yourself. You don't need to agree with everything in it, but you owe it to yourself to explore it. Because once you do, you'll never see reality the same way again. You'll realize that your potential has been underestimated by every system you've ever known. That your soul was meant to expand, not to comply. That your life isn't a fluke. It's a thread in something vast, intelligent, and sacred. You're not here by accident. You're not reading this because you're bored. You're here because something in you is ready. Ready to step outside the script. Ready to stop nodding and start questioning. You are the proof that the system can't contain you. And the more you embody that truth, the more others will see it in themselves. That's how change happens. Not with noise, but with awakening. The Urantia book doesn't come to you wrapped in prophecy or cloaked in thunder. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand allegiance. It waits. It's quiet, patient, almost too quiet for a world addicted to noise. And maybe that's why most people never find it, because it doesn't come with a brand, or a movement, or a charismatic leader. It just exists in plain sight, daring you to pick it up and see what it does to your mind. And once you do, something strange happens. You don't just read the book starts reading you. It's not just the content that unsettles you, it's the feeling that it knows you're looking for more. It doesn't try to scare you into faith or lure you with reward. It simply tells a version of reality that is so staggeringly vast, so carefully ordered, and so deeply human that you find yourself wondering how you ever accepted less. It rewires the way you see life, death, purpose, identity, and time. It doesn't give you easy answers. It gives you the questions you were never allowed to ask. What if the universe isn't a battlefield of souls, but a school for consciousness? What if you aren't a failed creature begging for redemption, but an unfinished soul invited to grow? What if Jesus wasn't sent to die, but to live to show you the way home? Not as a savior above you, but as a brother beside you. These aren't just theological tweaks. They are tectonic shifts. And once they happen inside you, nothing outside of you looks the same. You begin to see through the illusions, not just in religion or politics, but in how you relate to yourself. The shame you were conditioned to carry starts to feel artificial. The guilt, the fear, the idea that you have to earn your worth or suffer your way to peace suddenly, it all feels foreign. Because something older is stirring in you. Something that doesn't need external permission to exist. You're not finding the truth. You're remembering it. And whether you choose to accept the Urantia book as literal revelation or a brilliant piece of spiritual philosophy, its effect is undeniable. It disrupts. It disorients. Then it clarifies, not by telling you what to believe, but by challenging you to confront what you've believed all along. And that's where the power lies. Not in the book itself, but in what it activates in you. You don't finish the Urantia book as the same person who opened it. You either close it and go back to sleep, or you begin to live differently, not in rebellion, but in alignment. Because once you realize that your life is part of a divine architecture, that your thoughts echo through eternity, that your choices shape your soul's trajectory, you can't go back. You're no longer here to conform. You're here to evolve, to experience, to awaken. This book doesn't end with a prophecy. It begins with a question. And now the question is, yours, is this just a book or a blueprint? You've heard enough to know that you can't unknow this. So the only question left is whether you're going to ignore it or explore it. Don't wait for someone to validate what you feel inside. If you're still here, it's because you were meant to be. Now act on it. The truth doesn't need your belief to be real. But your life will never fully begin until you stop waiting and start seeking. And if you haven't already, sign up for Insights Academy. We share what can't be said here, perspectives and information most people will never encounter. You'll also receive a free copy of the Kybalion when you sign up. Because if you're going to challenge the system, you'll need tools they never wanted you to have. If this message resonated with you, let us know by commenting. I understood it. Because if you're still here, you're ready.